Hey fam. So I was replaying Luigi's Mansion 3 recently, as I do, and when I reached the first Polterkitty section, I suddenly had this weird flashback to every review of both Luigi's Mansion 3 and Dark Moon, which complained about these backtracking sections, despite the fact that I've personally never minded them. This got me thinking about the source of this discrepancy in opinion, since there are plenty of games in which I do mind backtracking sequences, and I realized that the difference came down to a question of intrinsic versus extrinsic player motivation, and perhaps to a greater extent, it came down to framing. The Luigi's Mansion games are a relative oddity within their genre because they're essentially collectathon adventure games where the things you collect are effectively worthless, since they usually don't buy you any extrinsically exciting rewards. I suppose the same argument could be made of all collectathons, but there's one key difference. In traditional collectathons, the collectibles do buy you an extrinsic reward. They are the currency of your progression. They don't necessarily net you new abilities or tools to play around with, but they do act as the gatekeepers to the exploration of further levels, in addition to offering the intrinsic satisfaction of simply engaging with the game to collect them. Luigi's Mansion games, on the other hand, are essentially linear adventure games with fairly railroaded progression, which encourage you to kick up every cloud of dust and hump every piece of furniture in order to collect money and gems, which are not the gatekeepers of your progression and are of no real exciting use to the player. Yes, I realize you can use cash to buy some items in Luigi's Mansion 3, but these are not exciting upgrades. They're simply expendables that make an already easy game even easier. Dark Moon handled this best, I feel, with money being converted into actual palpable upgrades to your Poltergust and Darklight, but still left a little something to be desired in the eyes of many players. And the original entry basically only used money to determine which PNG of a mansion you were treated to after the credits rolled. Dark Moon, however, in addition to a myriad of controversial changes to the original formula, introduced these Polterpup sequences, in which Luigi is forced to backtrack through previously conquered portions of each mansion in order to locate a mischievous ghost dog, which periodically steals an important key necessary to your progression. These keys are always obtained automatically, as dictated by the narrative, and these Polterpup chases are equally scripted. But this is actually why I rather enjoy them, to be honest. The fact of the matter is, Luigi's Mansion games are linear adventure games, more than they are collectathons. They are about the adventure and the atmosphere. They're about watching Luigi get spooked by every crack of thunder and suspicious shadow. Even the ever-vaunted original game forced players to retrace their steps through previously conquered rooms in order to solve missed puzzles or track down hidden and escaped boos. And while I feel it would be disingenuous to compare the Polterpup chases to something like the infamous Blackout sequence in the original title, I've always felt that they were functionally pretty similar, in a good way. They're just part of the ride, you know? Luigi is clumsy, the Polterpup is mischievous, and he periodically steals some vaguely important doodad because he wants Luigi to play with him for a little while, just like a real dog. But this becomes an adventure because he's supernatural and can walk through walls and jump up through ceilings. But in addition to the fact that the player is forced to retread old ground, I think what really bothers people about the Polterpup is the way it's framed. The pup chases are framed as a waste of your time. They're framed as you needing to retrieve an item you already went to painstaking lengths to obtain in the first place. They're framed as a scenario in which Luigi would be able to move on to new sights and spooks had the pup not shown up, and this is the real issue. Similarly to the Polterpup, I actually really enjoyed the Polterkitty segments in the third Mansion title. I thought they were a fresh take on the same concept, since they played similarly but have a different climax, and I felt like they didn't get enough credit for that. Whereas the pup was playful and friendly, and only rendered truly problematic because he was forcing Luigi to traipse back through dangerous environments, the Polterkitty is, like most cats, genuinely malicious. It fucking hates Luigi. It transforms into a terrifying monster whenever he gets near it, and it forces him to bait it out by turning his back on it and letting his skin crawl as it slowly approaches him for the kill. It also has multiple tails, which can serve as decoys for the poltergust, however, which is a really cool ludonarrative signal to the player of how many times left you have to catch it. And that's an improved detail over the Polterpup chases that I feel like I never see anyone give credit to. Having said that, the Polterkitty suffers from the same exact framing issue as the Polterpup, and this has led to fans taking to it very poorly. The kitty only shows up to waste Luigi's time by stealing an important progression item that he has already obtained. Like with the pup, the developers could have probably come up with a more original and interesting framing device, such as the Blackout in the original mansion, and accomplished the same type of gameplay padding without breeding so much ill will in most players. I don't mind these segments because I see them as just part of Luigi's clumsy, linearly structured adventure into paranormal territory, but I completely understand why the way they are framed makes them so unpopular. An example of a game which pisses me off to no end with its poor framing is The Legend of Zelda: Skyward Sword. Zelda is a fundamentally different subgenre of adventure game than Luigi's Mansion is. While these games are just as much about the intrinsic value of the adventure as any other, the player is guided forward not simply by the innate desire for progression, but by a dangling carrot of drip-fed extrinsic rewards, such as new items and abilities. Skyward Sword, funnily enough, actually nails this usual drip feed of extrinsic rewards, but it fumbles the ball miserably on the framing of its intrinsic rewards. See, Zelda narratives are usually some variation of the world needs saving and only Link can do it. Link is the hero of Hyrule. He's brave, he's skilled, he's capable, and he's the only person in the entire goddamn franchise who takes any direct initiative in righting the world's wrongs. But while this could come across as irritating in certain contexts, Link is usually at the very least supported by the characters who are aware of his mission. His allies are people who are trying to help him, even if they can't really accomplish much more than sailing him across the ocean so that he can do all the dirty work, or helping him find some hidden ancient temple so that he can do all the dirty work. But Skyward Sword has these obnoxious ally dragon guys whose entire purpose is just to test Link, to throw random obstacles in his path so that he can prove to them that he's truly the hero. And this becomes catastrophic to intrinsic player motivation in their portions of the narrative. Not only does it often result in some modified backtracking, but it's just terrible framing. The first time I tried to play through Skyward Sword, I was like, you know what? Fuck you guys! Do you want me to save the world or not? Cause I sure as shit don't see anybody else taking the fucking initiative. How about, instead of flooding the fucking forest just to see how well I swim so that you can deign me adequate to go visit a temple and do all the dirty work anyway, you actually fucking help me, seeing as I am the only person in the world who is even trying here. The funny thing is, though, the real killer here is the framing. I would be way more motivated to save the flooded forest if it was just framed as being Girahim's doing or something, rather than being prompted to because this ancient guardian decided that forcing Link to collect fucking tadpoles for no reason was the best use of everyone's time while the entire world was in danger. Like, in Ocarina of Time, you delve into the Great Deku Tree's belly because there is something inside of him that is hurting him and killing him, not because he wants to fucking test you or whatever. There are a myriad of very obvious and compelling ways to intrinsically motivate a player to do something or re-explore an area simply by framing the task correctly. But on the flip side, poor choices of framing can make even a task that should be fun and interesting into something that feels like a chore and a waste of the player's time. A lot of players hate Sora's journey to uncover the power of waking in Kingdom Hearts 3, not because it's a fundamentally uncompelling idea, but because after being told that Sora's adventures in the Disney worlds were necessary to awaken it, Ventus ends up just telling him that the power was in him all along and he could have accessed it at any time. If the framing had just been different, if the worlds had possessed some kind of MacGuffin or keyhole which were directly linked to this awakening, then no one would have batted an eye. Everything would have been fine. But this framing device ended up retroactively recontextualizing the entire adventure as a waste of time. And frankly, I don't blame players for being pissed off by that, even though I personally am in it for the Disney content anyway and don't need any sort of extrinsic motivation in order to enjoy it. My point is, the framing of player tasks in video games is extremely important. Far more important than many developers seem to realize. It can literally be the difference between a player having or lacking the motivation to see a game through to its conclusion. At best, good framing can make backtracking through recycled content feel meaningful and compelling, but at worst, bad framing can make entirely fresh content feel like a total waste of time. Hell, if the player is completely insane, it can lead to them making an entire video just complaining about the presence of Sparklium in Pikmin 4, when there were so many other totally obvious framing devices they could have used which would have made way more sense. And that's all I have to say about that. But please let me know what you think in the comments below. What are some other examples of poor framing souring certain sections of games you otherwise enjoy? Have you played something I didn't mention here which elevated a backtracking sequence through the power of a compelling framing device? I say this in every video, but I genuinely want to have a conversation, and I do converse with my viewers. If you write something, I will see it, and I'll always respond if I have something to say. I don't just ask for comments to feed the algorithm. Alright, peace out, and I hope to see you back here. Thanks for watching.